Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hey everyone, welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, the show where you give us your property questions and we give you good answers, hopefully in return. This week is no different, but before we get started, let's remind you of how you can get your question on the show.
Yeah, it's so easy. I'm going to be so bold as to say, if you can't figure this out, you shouldn't be investing at all. It's so easy. You just have to go to propertyhub.net/ask. When you get there, you can leave us a written question for the Sunday Times, because you can find our smiling faces in there every week. Or our preferred option is you let us hear your lovely voice and send us a question for the show. All of that is at propertyhub.net/ask. Let's have a listen now to our first question.
Hello, Rob and Rob. Mujtaba here from London. I moved to the UK back in 2021, and I have been a massive fan of the podcast ever since. I follow the YouTube channel quite closely as well, and I've read all the books. Thank you so much for all the incredible content and so much valuable information that you share with us regularly. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So my question was regarding my house that's due for a remortgage. And basically, I do have some cash which I wish to use in redecorating and adding value to the house. The thing that I'm concerned about is, rather than paying down the debt, if I do this, what's the guarantee and how do I ensure that the value add that I think I've done to the house is actually accounted for by the mortgage lenders as well? Now, I know this isn't strictly a property investment question because it's for my primary residence, but at the same time, I feel that it would be very valuable knowledge if I were to later refinance investment properties. So I guess just to cross all the T's and dot the I's, it'll be amazing to know, how do I make sure that when it comes to a refinancing, I am being as safe as possible? Thank you so much.
Oh, really good question. And do not worry, we like questions about all property. The fact it's about your residential property, I think there's lessons to be learned across any type of property investment. The first thing to be clear on is, are you adding value? You said you want to redecorate and add value to the house, but there's your perception of adding value and real adding value. So if you go and paint a property, it's unlikely to add meaningful value to a valuer. It may help slightly, but it's unlikely. Normally, if you do a refurb, it has to be in a shocking state before and look completely different afterwards, and a true transformation. But even better, adding value by adding more bedrooms or bathrooms or both, or an extension possibly. That's truly adding value because you've added square footage to the property and or you've added more bedrooms and bathrooms. So that will add value. Now, what you have to understand is, if you do that, will it add enough value? Will the amount you spend be acknowledged when you get the valuation? Well, that obviously depends on how much you spend, but also the area you live in. If you live in an area where it's a low value area and maybe you've got a 2-bed property and it's worth 150,000, the amount it would cost to add an extra bedroom may not uplift the value enough to justify the cost. Whereas if you live in the southeast and you did that, it probably would work out. So even though the cost of doing a refurb doesn't differ that much area to area, there is some regional differences, but it's not vast. Where you live will really dictate the value that you add as well. So bear that in mind. So the type of work that you're going to do matters, and also looking at what the cost will be and how much that will add on. Now, we were chatting with producer Dan before we recorded, and he said when he did a refurb, he got a valuer in before. So he knew what his baseline was for his property, and he knew that whatever he spent, it had to make up that amount or more for him to go ahead. So that's an interesting tip that you could take on yourself. But I would say one final, and I think very important point. This is your home. And yes, we always want to add value to your home. But if it is going to make it a nicer, more enjoyable environment for you to live in, and painting the property might not add a lot of value monetary-wise, if it's going to make it a more enjoyable place to live, then that's still not a bad investment for me. So you, of course, would look at it in a very strict way if this was a refurb project, a buy-to-let project. But when it's your own home, I think it's more nuanced. There's more to it than just how much you get out the property. When I refurbed my residential property, it was so I would enjoy the home. And the bonus was it added value as well. Have I gone to a spreadsheet to work out line by line how much value it's added? No. But I know it's roughly worked out well for me. But I didn't go in, as you can probably tell, with that as my primary driver. So the lessons still stand that I talked about earlier on, but also remember this is your own home, and for some people that will change things. Whatever you do, best of luck.
Okay, let's have our next question.
Hi, Rob and Rob. Really enjoying your podcast. It's really helpful and I've learned lots of information. So thank you guys very much. My question is about stamp duty. Now, I know you've answered quite a few questions on stamp duty already, which I've listened to and they've been really helpful. But my situation is slightly different. I have a property and this has been and always has been a buy-to-let property. I currently live with a family member, so I haven't ever actually lived in this property. Now I am about to buy a property that I'm going to live in. My name is going to come off of the mortgage of the buy-to-let property, but unfortunately it doesn't look like that's going to happen before I complete on my new residential property. Now, I'm wondering if the refund on the additional stamp duty charge will still apply to me because my first property was a buy-to-let. Hopefully that makes sense, and I really hope you can answer my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. There are so many stamp duty questions. There's so many variations of, well, in this circumstance, or this one, or this one, or this one, if I do this or that, can I get away without paying the surcharge? And the answer invariably is no. And whenever it comes to matters of tax, of course, the first answer is take tax advice, speak to your solicitor, find out from them. But based on my understanding and the information in your question, I think you're going to have to pay the surcharge here, regardless of the timing. Because the only cut and dried circumstance where you don't have to pay the surcharge, or at least can claim it back, is if you're replacing your main residence. You have a main home and then you're buying another one that replaces it. That's not the case here because you don't live in your buy-to-let property. The test is, do you own more than one property on the day that you buy the additional one? And in this case, it sounds like you will. And you said your name will be coming off the mortgage and you're talking about the timing of that, but that is not the test. Even if your name comes off the mortgage, unless there's some information that's not in the question, which there may well be, you will still own the property. So unfortunately, it does seem like here you are in line to pay the extra, and it does seem really unfair. If you start out with a buy-to-let and then later you buy your own home, in most cases your own home is going to be more expensive than your buy-to-let, then you end up paying the additional property surcharge on the more expensive property, which can add up to a lot. So it's not a nice situation, and obviously do check, but I believe that's what you're looking at.
So that's us done for another week. Make sure you join us on Thursday for the property podcast. And of course, you can find us on Sunday in the Sunday Times, answering your questions there. And we'll be back with another Ask Rob and Rob, same time, same place next week. Until then, take care, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.